What's up, guys? Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I have to say it's a little crazy that I am here in front of you, considering that for my second blog post ever, let's see if I can figure this out. Nope. I decided to make pretzels and learned very quickly wax paper does not go in the oven because I caught them on fire. And guess what? I still published the piece anyway. So wait, is that? Wait, there he is. Caught him on fire. So this is where I started. And so it feels really good to be here today. And I'm going to tell you how I got from pretzel mess to being here. So with the name of, the blog name, The Crafted Life, there's a little bit of pressure to be speaking on craft today. But we're not going to be talking about the art of gluing macaroni to things. If you thought that's what we were doing, I'm so sorry. You're welcome to leave. But also hit me up later. I will glue macaroni to anything. But instead, we're going to talk about the art of honing your craft and what that means. So as a kid, I definitely crafted. I think we all did like sand art, and we did the woven pot holders and the spirographs. But my personal journey with crafting did not start until about 2011 when I started my blog. This was it. This was the first blog that I did. It was called 52 Weeks Project, and I started it when I was working about 75 hours a week at a job that was really not creative. It never let me breathe. It was my first real job out of college. I was 23 at the time, and I was in charge of a staff of 30. I was responsible for making sure that 250 students who were in failing schools got access to free math and reading tutoring after school. So it was one of those jobs that while it was rewarding, it was definitely not something that I expected to do. I studied art history in college. So for me, it was a lot emotionally. And I got into the pattern where I was going to work all day. I'd come home, make dinner, maybe watch an episode of TV, answer emails, go to bed, wake up, do the same thing again and again. And honestly, I found myself getting depressed because of it. So instead of, continuing on that path, I was lucky enough to make the decision to pull myself out of it. It hadn't gotten that bad, so I was like, okay, I'm going to start a blog where I do one new craft project a week, and that is all it's going to be. I'm going to photograph it and upload it, even though I had never held a camera. I've never used Photoshop. It was just going to be my little Tumblr blog that would hold myself accountable, because I thought if I didn't put it anywhere, I would definitely stop doing it. So I started a blog, and now for some reason, I am here showing you all of it, which is insane, because I clearly did not think anyone would ever see this. And that just proves that even though you might not know something today, it doesn't mean you won't know it tomorrow. I taught myself photography, I taught myself Photoshop, I did all of those things. So if you here want to start a blog and don't know how to use a camera, you can do it. And just to show you a little bit of my beginning photography, because you woke up early and should get some laughs in. Let's see, this on the left, the bottles, that was my very first blog project. I took old juice containers and spray painted them and basically just had pink bottles that I put on a shelf. That was all there was to it. You can tell my photo styling with the brown paper bag on the cement was just top notch from the get-go. Secondly, I did coasters. I bought coasters from a hardware store and put paper on them because, you need a place to put your cocktails, I guess. And then the last was just glitter I put on candles. I went through a phase where I found chairs out of the dumpster, and because I lived in Portland and people apparently throw out a lot of their chairs. So I would find them and sort of give them, basic makeovers. Very basic because the middle chair was in the trash for a very good reason. One, smelled like garbage, but two, the supporting beam was not there. So it was a little wobbly chair. But it was one of those things that it was a fun project. I didn't really have to buy too many supplies. I had never, made over a chair before. So it was exhilarating. It was rewarding to take something that looked a little dingy and maybe make it a little prettier. Basically, I was a young, sexy Martha Stewart, just catching things on fire and throwing glitter everywhere. But I mean, Martha, you still got it if you're out there. Hello. But this was essentially the very early stages of how I would later form my vision, and my vision is what it is today. The projects were a little selfish in nature, so while I was sharing this publicly, for me, it was just about me and what I wanted to do. Even if I decided to put these back by the dumpster where they clearly belonged, it was no big deal because I was checking off my box of doing one new creative thing a week. And I know to some of you, maybe one new project a week doesn't sound like much. For me, it was a big deal. I hardly had free time to begin with, so I was in a position where I was saying no to friends. I had to say no to family. I missed out on, brunches and hiking and all these other social fun things that I would want to do. And I focused on my craft, my hobby, that I wasn't necessarily good at the time. So I know it's very difficult to, one, not do the fun things, but also to not feel like an asshole for telling people that you want to spend time by yourself. So I was in it, I was doing it, and I honestly started to feel happier. I was getting this creative release where I was sitting down once a week and I wasn't checking my work emails for a couple hours. I wasn't pressured to think about these outside factors. I was taking nothing or taking old things and then making them better. So I got this satisfaction of making something with my hands. I ended up sticking with it. Let's see. And I did a little makeover to my blog. Clearly still not a designer. Also, that's me with red hair. It was very long ago. But the one thing that I heard constantly from my friends at the time was, oh, I can't do that. I'm not crafty. I don't have time. It's just like, it's not in my skill set. And now I am just like, I am here to prove everyone wrong who thinks that. That is my life mission, because you really can. I felt that with my crazy schedule, that if I could do it, anyone could really do it. And that's sort of what I became aware of a year into the project. So I wanted to stick with it. I kept my blog name the same, because why change it, and then just kept with it. So I wanted more from the project for the second year. I had gotten to my rhythm. On Sundays, I would start crafting around noon, 1 o'clock. I would photograph, edit, hit publish at 6 p.m., and then I would research for the following week what I was going to do. So Sundays were my day. I got into my rhythm. I was getting in a groove, and now into my second year, I wanted a little something more. I wanted to tell people that they could craft. So the problem that I was having was that the work that I was doing was not necessarily valuable. My photography wasn't really great. I didn't necessarily write much. There are some posts where I just wrote here's the stuff, figure it out yourself, like that type of stuff. Really just nailing that. Good thing I got a book deal, right? So that was just where I was. And so it was just my vision was not communicating with my skills. I couldn't make the connection to show people that. One little trip down memory lane too, my first Instagram, just so you can see. Who misses the borders? I mean, right? So I went from realizing there was a disconnect between how people were connecting with my blog and decided to put time into it. I took a photo styling class. I learned more about my camera on YouTube. I went to conferences. I started from what I was doing Sunday every week. I was now maybe doing 2 times a week, 3 times a week, whenever I had the free time. Let me show you a little more what happened in this transition time. And then the now, this photo was probably taken in 2014. So this is still a few years ago, but there you can see my first project, those bottles. Just put them on a stack of books in the room. They serve no function. It's just bottles on books. and not even, the binding is ripped, all of that. The second photo, it gives the bottle context. I put leaves in. I gave it a nice clean background so that you could focus on the craft itself. Let's see. Whew, God. I should have been a jewelry designer because look at those first earrings. They're just terrible. For some reason, I was like, oh, if I put them on a cloth napkin, they're going to be fancy as hell. So I did that. And then again, another photo taken in 2014 of a second set of clay earrings that I used. Different technique. I used the cookie cutter to make the heart. So essentially, I was putting time into my craft. It was no longer about the act of just doing it. It was, how do I get better at this thing that is bringing me happiness? So if you never dedicate time to your craft, how do you expect to get better? And that is the main thing on how you hone your craft. You have to give it time. Otherwise, what are you going to do? So it came where I was working at a different job. I had moved to San Francisco. I was working at a startup about 80 hours a week and was just, again, back in that, I'm working for someone else's vision while this thing in my life is giving me so much happiness. So I decided to quit, which seems crazy at the time because, one, San Francisco is insanely expensive. But also, I had only made like $100 for my blog at the time, so I learned very quickly that I probably should have had a different plan, but sometimes you just go for it. So I had to make a lot of sacrifices, and I ended up moving back to Portland, where I was living. I was then working 80 hours on my own thing. It was no longer about someone else or someone else's stress. It was about what I wanted to do. But my very first year in business, I made $13,000, which to go from making $90,000 a year to $13,000 is very difficult to do. You can barely get by with that, but I wasn't able to do other things. I missed out on birthdays. I missed out on the birth of my best friend's kid. I didn't go home for Christmas. I didn't go to weddings. I didn't do anything aside from work and just try as hard as possible to kick ass at what I was doing. I put myself in this creative rut because I had to. There was no other option. It was my job. I had to do it. That's what I did. And now today, this is my work. I have worked with brands like West Elm and Lowe's and Etsy, and I've been in national magazines. I have published a book. Last month, my book came out, which is insane. And it's not only a book that I wrote, but I also photographed it and I styled it. So I took skills that I didn't have a few years prior, and I've been able to deliver them in a very professional way. So again, very surreal for me to be here. And just what I want to ask you is, how many of us in this room wish we were better at something than we are right now? I know I feel that way. I still feel that way with my photography. I want to get better. I want to craft better things. I want to do better things constantly. And to follow up, are you doing everything in your power to put time towards that craft? Are you putting in the hours? Right now we're in a very crazy time. Everything feels very overwhelming. Everything feels very shitty. And so have you been able to disconnect a little bit to find that spark of happiness, to find that release within your craft? Are you watching TV and going to bed? Or are you taking the time to take a class online, accessing free resources? Are you meeting people in the room? Have you all met someone new here today? Because everyone in this room is creative and awesome, and please say hello to one another because they are going to be your biggest advocates and they will support you on this journey. That was something that I had as well, and I could not have done it without. So basically, go home today, have that conversation with yourself, be honest, maybe find where your time is going, because you can't get from, burnt pretzels and Guy Fieri to a book deal without doing any work. And you can't do it without sacrifice, and I know that it is hard, but I promise you that you can do it if you dedicate the time once a week, maybe start like I did. because I think that the world needs more beauty, and I think that you have it within you, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. So, yeah, that's the speech.